Washington, D.C. is known to have one of the strictest gun laws in the country. To what extent does the Second Amendment protect its American people?
Some people have the sense that if they have a gun, that protects them, but guns are inherently violent and kill people. They're responsible for many, many thousands of deaths in this country a year.
Every day in this great country, gun violence kills 90 people every day, 150,000 have perished.
The Supreme Court decision has said there's an individual right to own a gun. We have laws. The 1968 Gun Control Act says certain people cannot own a gun.
What I'm more focused on is the effect of gun laws in the United States. So at the state level as well as at the federal level.
In general, the main differences in state laws is whether you can buy a gun without a background check if you're buying from a private person.
I think that gun laws right now, there isn't, at least from my knowledge, I don't think there's a particular problem with them.
Right now, we lose 90 people a day to gun violence. Homicides, suicides, and tragic, avoidable accidents. That's 33,000 people a year.
That front page has photographs of the 20 beautiful children who were lost in that unspeakable act of terror and horror. They are 20 wonderful human beings who would be 11 years old today.
You know, they're as strict as they can be. The Supreme Court has knocked down some of DC laws. So at one point it was the strictest law in the country.
I am currently a resident of the District of Columbia. I understand the very strict gun laws that we have here. Well, I also was a resident of New Mexico, where gun laws are much more relaxed.
I'm sure as you've learned so far, there's a lot of variation at the state level. So it makes it really difficult for me to say something like I have comprehensive knowledge over it.
There's more weapons in this country, guns, than people.
We're very familiar with the NRA's work, especially when it comes to opposing gun control laws and provisions that have been put forward in Congress.
They argue vehemently that there is an individual right to bear arms.
We have a right to carry firearms in any situation. We have a right to own guns.
I think the main issue now, as particularly, and I think DC is a good lens, because again, we had DC versus Heller, which enshrined in its holding that DC residents have a right to gun ownership, particularly in their homes. So within your home, you're entitled to license a firearm. The main issues right now are to what extent are restrictions permissible.
I would say they protect their version of the Second Amendment, so the Second Amendment, I believe the Second Amendment, and the Supreme Court believes the Second Amendment confers an individual right to own a gun. Like all rights, there are limitations to that right. The NRA basically believes that there are no limitations to the Second Amendment right. So they defend a viewpoint of the Second Amendment that I believe is inaccurate, that right allows for anybody to own a firearm, to use a firearm, to carry it wherever they are, and that anyone includes, criminals, terrorists, people in the country illegally. So they have a very, very expansive view. They're a very powerful lobbying force in this country. They have somewhere between 3 and 4 million members, and they exert a lot of influence in state capitals and here in Washington.
Guns, have become like drugs where they're traded behind closed doors.
There's a difference between drugs and guns. Every gun starts out as a legal object, and then some get funneled into the market.
People want them, but because there are strict laws about them, you can't, that it's not like you can go to, it's not like food where you go to a grocery store, you still have to it's not super easy to get a gun.
Drugs start out illegal from the beginning. It's all criminal. So closing off, making sure you can't buy a gun without a background check, making sure there's some record of the sale, making sure that there's penalties for gun trafficking, making sure that selling a gun that, that has had its serial number altered is a crime. Those things, those are ways that you can shrink that market and make it harder for criminals to get guns.
For anything, it's a double-edged sword. So I think there's plenty of people who feel safe and are protected with guns.
Because we also have to close what's called the Charleston loophole, where the killer in Charleston went to buy a gun, he filled out the form. Under the loophole, he could come back and get it after 3 business days. The information that he wasn't eligible because he had a felony conviction didn't come through until after he went, used that gun, and murdered 9 people in a church like this in Charleston.
So I think some people want to have protection as they see it through having a weapon, but I have children in our house, and having a weapon in the house, and if I had that, my children could be exposed to that weapon. So to what extent it protects us, I mean, it certainly protects people having that individual right if they want to have it. But again, these are very dangerous pieces of equipment, and I don't know that that's protection in the way that I look at it with the proliferation of over 300 million guns in this country.
What if Congress did something, anything, to protect our kids from gun violence?
I think we need to pass some laws that I have been advocating for. We need comprehensive background checks. We need to close the gun show loophole, close the online loophole.
Looking into the future, will DC remain as strict with its gun laws in accordance to the Second Amendment?